Wednesday evening, time for Light 'em Up. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everybody, wherever you're joining us from. This week it's actually accurate. I think we really have me sitting here at 8 p.m. in Austria, and then we sort of catch the East Coast in the afternoon and California late morning. So just another testament to our show being truly international. Good to see everybody. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the lounge. We're post Intertabac. Everybody's still in sort of, as I call it, Intertabac hangover mode, wondering what just happened after a crazy busy trade show over in Europe. But I'm super happy to have both Coleman and James from Sinistro Cigars joining us today here at the show. I've been looking forward to this one for a while, and here we are. We made it happen, and I'm so glad that both of you gentlemen found the time just after traveling as well. I know. So, without further ado, Coleman Fine, James Agopian from Sinistro Cigars. Welcome to Light 'em Up.
Thanks for
Thanks
having
for
us,
having
brother.
us.
It's our pleasure. I'm super happy to have you. Plenty to discover, plenty to talk about. As I mentioned, we have a truly global audience. So there's people logging on from Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Europe, Africa, the US, and Middle and South America as well. And what's fascinating is that despite the relatively young age of Sinistro cigars, you have had the vision and the foresight at a relatively early stage of the brand evolution to go heavy on the international distribution as well. You guys are very well represented across the globe, not just in the United States. And I think for a boutique brand, it's been on the market for 10 years. That's remarkable. First of all, because we just had Intertabak in Dortmund, maybe you guys want to share a little bit of your recap, your analysis of how the show has been for you, and maybe you have a few like key takeaways from the trade show that you would like to share with us at the beginning. On the market for 10 years, that's remarkable.
Yeah, so James was unable to attend the show. I was there myself with our international sales manager Andre. Um, One thing I can definitely say was it seemed much bigger than PCA trade show in Las Vegas with all the different halls. We were located in Hall 4, and I just went out for a little bit just to look around and went outside to the food trucks. And God, there had to be what I think at least 10 halls, right? I think there were maybe
It's
15 halls, and each hall was just filled, completely packed, both with manufacturers and consumers or retailers or distributors. It was that was probably the key takeaway was how many people were there and how there was no vacant space. It was completely packed. So that was pretty cool to see. That was our first time or my first time attending Intertabac.
I mean, what makes the whole show just crazy is obviously when you come from the PCA, or when you look at it through the PCA lens, that's purely focused on the premium cigar space, whereas Dortmund and Intertabak pretty much covers the whole spectrum of tobacco products and accessories. So there's all stuff going on. I think they even had a CBD booth or cannabis related stuff outside of the halls. So that alone makes it massive. But also for the premium space, it's remarkable to see the growth. And we can talk about this, and I'm curious to hear your perspective. But I think primarily fueled by the ongoing supply challenges of Habanos and the quote unquote non-existence of Cuban cigars in the international humidors. There seems to be a void that a lot of the boutique manufacturers are now looking at trying to fill. So, at least from my perspective, it seems way more busy in terms of US attendance. And of course, there's people coming over from more than 70 countries, I learned. But definitely in the premium space, more and more boutique brands and smaller companies from the US are looking at Intertabak as well.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because that was probably one of the main points that everyone there was making was about how the price of Habanos or Cuban cigars have gone up so high, and how many people who who only smoked Cubans have migrated to smoking Dominican and Nicaraguan and Honduran and Costa Rican cigars now. Not only because they're more readily available, but also because of the price. The price point. I mean, Cuban cigars have gone up what, 200 to 400, in some cases 500%.
Yeah,
But that's a good point what you
absolutely.
said. Yeah, that's probably one of the main things. I never even thought about that. It's one of the main things I heard was a lot of distributors were coming over to the booth saying the exact same thing you said, that they're looking more into the new world, non-Cuban, especially the boutique market. But yeah, that's a good point, man.
How was
Um,
the show for you? What were some of your thoughts and conversations that you had with the people coming over to your booth?
Um, Luckily I was okay. So our international sales manager Andre, lucky he knew everybody there. So everybody, plus he spoke 4 languages, so that was a huge help to me. But um, believe it or not, a lot of the retailers, or I'm sorry, the distributors, they were familiar with who we were. They were familiar with Sinistro. Um, we already do business with a few countries such as Switzerland and Norway and Canada, and there are a few several of the countries who came over to us were highly interested, and they said they specifically wanted to speak with one of us to bring in the brand. They heard a lot of good things about us. They've read a lot about us. So that was cool just to meet everybody. Everybody was very humble. Everybody was super cool. Typically at the trade shows in America, both TPE and PCA, one big difference I saw was when I tried to give people samples at Inner Tobacco, like, no, 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 it's okay, it's okay. Maybe just one sample, but it was a different vibe. It was very enjoyable. And we're looking forward to going again next year. So
yeah, and like all the booths have food from what I heard. I wasn't there, but all the booths have food and everything, like so you really don't have to leave your booth unless you have to go to the bathroom. You know what I mean? So it's got to be. I mean, I wasn't there. I really want to go next year. I'm definitely going next year. But yeah, from what I've heard, like the show is just a little bit more because all the cigar guys are in one hall, from what I heard. So everyone, there's a lot more, I guess. It's not mixed in with so many like liquor stores, or sometimes at PCA you kind of have to do due diligence to see who's approaching you, and what kind of store do you want to be in. And I think with uh especially with Dorman, like being on the back end of it on this end, um you know uh you're already vetting everybody, you know what I mean, beforehand, because you don't open the account right there usually. It's always emails back and forth, and then you could actually vet the distributor, where at PCA it's more, like it's there. People are coming in and putting orders like right away, opening new accounts. So I think that I think it's a little bit better because you could vet who you're selling your product to before you sell your product to them.
James, I think that that's a fundamental point and difference where PCA is very much sales oriented, and it's about writing those orders and making sure that you move product along. Whereas in Dortmund, barely any sales happen, right? It's more to forge those relationships and to truly connect with your international partners, with your German retailers. So there's a good mix of importers and distributors, shop owners. In some instances, of course, they're they're one and all, so they encompass both roles. But I find that refreshing because the conversation is much different when you actually focus on, here we are working on our partnership, working our relationship, and talking about whatever it might be, instead of just writing orders and trying to get the money moving.
Yeah, especially as a boutique, it's it's like as a boutique, like we get all the time where we have like a really good account and in a certain city, and like the smoke shop will want to open the account, just to beat him by $1 or $2 and try to move business to them, So
Yeah.
that's something you got to be wary about in PCA, because you don't, you kind of, it's harder to do your due diligence. You have 3 days, So like Googling someone's store, trying to figure out where it is, while you're getting the order, it's a little bit harder dealing with that. And you obviously, like, first thing we usually say is, what city are you in? And we know we're not one of the bigger brands, so obviously we want to be in everybody's store. That's the goal, you know what I mean? But we're not a big enough brand where it makes sense to be in everyone's store right off the bat. Sometimes it makes more sense to start a city, grow the city, and then eventually expand out, so you're not doing anybody injustice, one of your retailers injustice. So it's that's what I liked about. I mean, I wasn't there. Again, I'm getting all the back end stuff from my emails and when I'm here now, but just seeing that is actually a lot easier. You know what I mean? Especially on my end, because I'm like vetting the guys and asking, like, I'm getting the emails, and then I'm asking friends that are manufacturers that have been dealing internationally for a long time, like, what do you think of this guy? Does this guy do well? Is this guy serious? A lot of different things. And another thing I noticed from international, a lot of shops are coming in and saying they're distributors. So you got to kind of avoid that too, because you want to sell to a distributor, not a shop, because usually your shop kind of just wants exclusivity and wants to keep your brand in his shop only. So, not that we've distributed internationally a long time, but I've been seeing that that's starting to pop up too, where shops now want to be distributors, or online brands want to be distributors. So that's kind of what I'm weary about too, is getting in bed with somebody like that, and there is no growth after a while.
I think in general, the dynamics and the way that the international markets are organized, it might be a bit of a challenge, or you have to get adapted in the beginning, if you only ever sold within the United States, because you have to deal with so many different regulations, taxation, warning labels and stickers and this and that and the other. It's a complete and utter clusterfuck, and it's a bit of a mess. So I understand that for most brands, just serving the US market is by far the easiest pathway, and also the one where you probably make the most money anyways. Besides the convenience fact that the US is the biggest cigar market, no comparison, and nothing even comes close. However, I had lengthy conversations with Charlie Minato from Half Wheel during the show, and during our dinner, and he said that he was also fascinated by the dynamics that he saw during the trade show, and how a lot of brands are looking into opening their own warehouses or setting up distribution centers within Europe and in the Middle East. So it certainly seems like there's a lot of stuff going on. And if you haven't had a chance, for all of you guys out there, check out Half Wheel's report, and Charlie's write-ups about the trade show. It was interesting to see some of his takeaways and his analysis. That being said, James, sorry, please.
Sorry, I kind of want to. I think, look, for me, for us as a brand, I think the international market is amazing. It's not. I love getting new countries, because, depending on who you're dealing with as a distributor, it's actually, for me, it's a lot easier, because you're getting the order, you're placing it with the factory, and you're getting paid right away, and then you're shipping. So it's a little bit less I mean, it's easier for us because it's not our factory. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's harder for the boutiques that have their own factories to do all that stuff, because and we use a bigger factory, the El Artista, so they have everything kind of already. They already have everything. They've already done it so many times in different countries that, even if it's not their brand that they sold to a different country, it's another brand they've sold to a different country, or he's done a lot of.
Good point.
He does a lot of shipping for different brands out of Dominican too. So for us, it's a little bit easier and more seamless, I guess, doing international. So it all depends on, you know, it all depends on how the business structure is set up, I guess. You know what I mean? I could see how it's harder with factories that are owned, like that are owned by the boutique brand, because there's so much more that has to be done, and there's so much more that has to go along with it. But for us, it's like, especially like, let's say it's a country where we have to do stickers and warning labels and stuff. So it's all done, like we'll print it and it's all done in the factory. It's not where I have to instruct the factory how to do it and tell the employees and stuff. So I'll send in the order. I'll specifically tell them how the order has to be filled, and then it's up to the factory to get it done. But if it was us in the factory and we had to explain to our employees and kind of make sure it's done right and stay over everybody and make sure, it would be a lot more complicated. So I could
hear
see
you.
where, you know, a little for us, like for me, international customers, it's actually a little bit easier and better to deal with sometimes.
That's interesting, and James, great segue to what I actually wanted to ask you just a moment ago, and that is going back to the very early days of Sinistro, and how you guys set up the foundation, how you built that foundation. So I would love to learn a little more about your philosophy and the vision that you had before launching the brand. Did you have a very clear idea as to where you wanted to be, which shops you wanted to be in, which countries you were targeting? Because you both have retail background in the US in various different states, so you had a great view of the industry, and you had a particular lens to look through, which I think is very valuable when you start your own brand. What was the initial concept and philosophy when you launched?
Um, we so when we first started, we did have a plan on where we wanted to be, what shops we wanted to be in. Obviously, because we were on the retail side, we've got like, when I travel, I'm a cigar geek. I go to cigar lounges. You know, it doesn't matter. I love looking at humidors. Doesn't matter where it is. Even some of the shops that people are like, oh, there's no point in going in there. Sometimes you go in there and there's like aged cigars and they've been sitting there for years. You know what I mean? So I'm a big cigar geek on going out and definitely seeing shops. I definitely knew exactly what shops I wanted to be in. Now, knowing what shops you want to be in and those shops picking you up is a very big different story. You know, at the beginning, it was more like, you know, at the beginning it was just knocking on doors, you know, the old fashioned way. And pretty much everyone was like, who the fuck are you? And why is anyone going to buy your cigar? And like, that was pretty much the answer. International was not even a thought. You know, we didn't think, you know, I don't think we thought that far ahead even with the brand. International was more people coming up to us at the beginning and asking us if we wanted to sell internationally, you know, and it wasn't even a thought of ours because I mean, we were just trying to get the brand going and trying to get the sales in the US because we were here, you know, and we knocking on doors and trying to pick up stuff. We realized like that's gonna take a long time before we could start knocking on international doors, you know. But it wasn't even a thought at the beginning, just because we had no idea it was going to grow as big as it did. And, you know, obviously a lot of it is, you know, Cuba and the prices and not shipping to other countries. Like my Canadian distributor says, most Canadian humidors are now 25% Cuban or 20% Cuban, where before they used to be 100% Cuban, you know, so that just literally opens the door wide for guys like us to kind of establish and get in. So that was it's been fairly easy, you know, but I think because we've had the presence in some other countries, it's been easier for us to open the accounts. But like he said, like we had guys coming up and already knowing that they wanted to open an account with us. So that was amazing to see that. I knew we were gonna do okay. Our the booth we were in, the guy Ma Hung, he was telling us like, don't be too excited. You might not get any orders and this. And I understand if we were just freshly coming into the international market, but I kind of had an idea since we're already in the international market, it should be it should be easier for us to get accounts than it was, and again, that's just because we were already in the international market, and we have a pretty good social media following. So as long as I think it was easier for us. But if we went there without any, uh, um, if we didn't go there and we didn't have any international presence and we didn't have so much social media present, I don't think we would have gotten the feedback that we got. You know what I mean?
Coleman, how do you think about that in retrospect now after 10 years with the brand? Um, how far do you feel you sort of naturally deviated from the initial concept and the initial idea to what actually ended up happening and how things eventually unfolded?
Yeah, it's crazy to believe. Like you said, where do we? What was my main, or what was our main objective when we first started? I kind of just wanted to be in everywhere. I wanted to be in almost every store in Pittsburgh, and we do very. That's my hometown, Pittsburgh, and then James already had California pretty locked down. Our primary focus was the United States. We were trying to keep up with production there, making sure all retailers got what they wanted when they wanted it, because even 5, 6, 7 years ago, we would get emails almost monthly from international distributors interested in our brand. And back then, again, this is 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. We kind of had to tell them, we're focused on America right now. We want to, we don't want to get in over our head. We're still kind of new to this. But how much we've grown since, in the last few years, but especially within the last 4 to 5 years, I just saw someone put a comment up, Eduardo, our friend Eduardo, asking what new lines are coming out for 2025. Just this year alone, we have at least four new brands coming out. So yeah, it's just, we've been very lucky. What's that?
Yeah. Sorry, go for it.
Yeah, I was just saying we're very, very lucky, very fortunate, very blessed, and very thankful to everybody who who supports our brand, smokes our stuff, enjoys our stuff. So we're very excited and very happy.
Me and Coleman are very hands-on too. Like, we're always on the road. He's always on the road. I'm always on the road. I just got back from Las Vegas like last night. The week before I was in Sacramento. So we're very hands-on, and we kind of did that to make, like, so we're like, if there's stuff that he could do, that's why it's actually easier for us that he's in the East Coast and I'm in the West Coast. So if there's anything, like, he takes care of everything over there, I take care of everything over here. So that's kind of like we're blood, sweat, and tears into this brand. So the growth that we've seen has been, like, we say it all the time, and we always make jokes about, like, talking about, like, staying humble, because we do have, like, some kind of arrogance in our industry, so but people are like, oh, James, like, so I have some customers that are like, James, you're probably a millionaire already, and I'm like, no, do you see me arrogant yet? I'm like, I haven't hit that threshold. I'm like, well, you'll know when I'm rich, when I start becoming arrogant, so but yeah, we're just we're very humbled by the like, we still don't believe the reaction we got at Dortmund. It's still kind of like feels like a dream, we knew it was going to be good, but we didn't know it was going to be that good. And especially in our first year,
Well, James, it clearly shows, and I think that's what the people out there truly appreciate is when they actually feel that whoever is behind the brand is sincere and honest and authentic in their approach. Besides the fact that being hands-on, I think adds an extra layer of credibility, where it's not just, another guy going to one of the big factories and be like, I want to start my own brand. And then, you get whatever private label samples they have in the drawer and be like, here's your cigar. Um,
good
Speaking
luck.
of which, you both had, if I remember correctly, I think you both had worked on private labels or house blends for your respective retail shops, which already served as sort of the the foundation, or you already had that connection established with La Aurora, in the beginning, which I know you were working a lot with initially. So I guess all of that helped tremendously. Um, how did the change or how did that flip occur though when you said, okay, let's take this bold step and let's actually bring the brand to life and launch Sinistro?
Well, so I kind of launched Sinistro um, by myself for the first couple of years, and then Coleman came on after a while. So the Habana Vieja was my house cigar, but I had already made. So on the retail side, I kind of saw the writings on the wall. I was in an outdoor mall in California. I had a 5-year lease with a 5-year option. I kind of knew they weren't going to renew my lease because, smoking and California, especially Northern California. And, I was surprised we even got the lease, honestly, because our neighbors were like Gucci and Salvador Ferragamo. I didn't expect to even get into that mall, and we were allowed to smoke in there. We did the whole ventilation and the whole nine, but um, I knew they weren't going to renew our lease, so I started working on Sinistro a few years before the shop closed, just to start working on the blends, the designs, and everything. And I kind of that's when I wanted to get into manufacturing. I love retail; it's an amazing business because of you get to meet all sorts of walks of life. Doesn't matter if it's someone uh, that makes $1 million or someone that makes much less. You get to meet and talk to all these different walks of life, all these gentlemen that for me when I started I was much younger, so everybody was much older than me. And getting advice from a lot of these guys and like talking to them, it was a very retail was an amazing experience. But I realized I'm not going to find another shop where I'm going to be next to Gucci and Salvador Ferragamo. So I wanted to get into manufacturing, and that's what started it off. And then I had the HV line for the shop. I had done that after I worked on the Sinistro blends. Um, and then I brought it into the shop maybe 3 years after, before we shut down the store. But I was already, because of what was going on with the store and the lease was coming up, I was already pretty much on the road like the last year that the shop was open, and then trying to build Sinistro as a brand. But honestly, blending is my favorite thing to do. Like
Mhm.
it's one of the most fun things to do. I'll go in the factory and I'll work on stuff that um like I'll constantly be working when I'm in the factory just because I love what I'm doing. And we have so many blends. Like the one we're gonna probably release at PCA, it's a blend we had done 4 years ago. Because we had done it had sat in the aging room, and we kept going back to it and smoking it, and we love the blend so much. We redid it again just to make sure, because obviously we're not going to age the cigar another 4 years before we bring it out if it's coming out at PCA. So, we re-rolled it to try to figure out what the perfect, age time is. But again, that was a blend that we had 4 years ago, and we knew it was really good. But, as a boutique, you can't just keep releasing stuff constantly, like you can't do 10 releases a year. So, there's a lot of stuff we've shelved, and then a lot of stuff that I've shelved, I've sold to retailers as house cigars. So it actually, being over there and blending constantly has helped us like do stuff for our retail partners too. So that's a cool thing. Like, so I've had a lot of retailers that are like, "Hey, do you have anything that you've been working on?" And I'm like, "Oh, I got 10 or 15 of them that I've been working on. Hold on, let me bring them to you." So it's pretty cool being able to help retailers like that too. And again, like all that is because of the business we have with El Artista. You know what I mean? We wouldn't, like if if we were in our own factory, a smaller factory, and it wouldn't I wouldn't be able to do what we do, especially for the retailers. So again, a lot of that stuff is because of the people we work with, not because me and like it's because we're Sinistro and we have all the connections, but we're lucky to work with the right people.
Just curious, James, when you were doing these house blends initially and then slowly morphed into Sinistro, do you think that working on a house blend is fundamentally different from when you were actually trying to launch a brand? Do you feel that different aspects need to be taken into consideration, or you have to approach the entire thing differently?
Um, so no, because I didn't have like for when I was making the cigars for Sinistro and I was making the cigars for the house cigars, I approached the same way unless someone asks for a certain price point, right? So then you have to decide what tobacco you're going to use on that blend, you know? So if like I have a customer and he's like, I don't want it to be over, X amount of dollars, that's the only time I approach it a different way. Other than that, and then usually when I'm blending, it's every time I go, especially working with El Artista, like it seems like they have something new every time I go over there to work with, So
Yeah.
When he says that, I think you mean different tobaccos, new tobaccos and stuff, right, James?
Yeah, new tobaccos and like the last time we were there, we were working with some Paraguayan tobacco, and that was new to me. I had never seen Paraguayan tobacco or touched Paraguayan tobacco, so um, every time I go back in there, if there's a new tobacco, I'm blending with it just because I want to see what I could do with that tobacco or what. Um, so that's one of the reasons I'm constantly blending. Sometimes I'll be going over there, and I will have nothing to. I won't be set on anything to do, but then he'll be like, "Hey, come here. We just got this. Look at this," and then I'll smoke a pure grade, and I'll automatically start figuring out, what wrapper should I use, what binder should I use, what. So the only time I approach blending differently is when the customer puts restraints on me. Like, I want this wrapper, I want this price point, I want this binder. Then I have to kind of do stuff um, towards what the customer wants me to gear the blend towards.
Part of the reason I asked the question in that way, and it sort of ties in with something you mentioned earlier, about as a boutique brand, you can't just come up with new stuff all the time. You have to follow a certain pathway, or you have to keep your portfolio somewhat clear and concise and clearly understandable to your partners and the end consumer. And and that's where I thought, well, instead of doing a house blend where you maybe have a certain objective in mind, did you have the clear vision of this is these are the core pillars that we want to have with Sinistro, and we need to create these cigars in order to round off our portfolio and launch with something that's clear, that's concise, that's very clearly understandable, but also sort of ticks certain boxes so that everybody can find something in your portfolio.
At the beginning, yes. When we first released, yes, I was like, we need and at the beginning, again, like I was more of a cigar geek, so I was kind of turned off of Connecticut, but I wanted two medium and one full body, a Habano, a Nicaraguan Habano, and a Maduro, and that's what we set out to do. Um, After that, I started realizing it's better to blend, because every crop is different. Doesn't matter if you have the same tobacco. So I started blending, uh, you know, um, with newer stuff. So like the Desperado that we released 2 years ago, um, that was so we know we were going to do something every year new, or we try to do something new every year, where it's add a size or make a new blend, and if we've been stagnant for a little while and we haven't done anything new, we want to release something new. So um, we're still people still talk about us, and we're still kind of relevant in the industry. I've noticed if you don't drop something new at least every 2 years, your relevance falls down.
Irrelevant.
Yeah,
Mm.
it comes down a little bit, and your sales drop. And it's just the way our industry is, and it's the consumer base that we have. So you got to keep it exciting for them constantly, for them even just to come back and try the cigar they liked from your brand. It's different when you're a big brand. It's a lot easier because it's much more, you remember bigger brands because you it's something you've smoked for so long. Sinistro that you just picked up, you could love it, but you know, out of muscle memory or whatever you want to call it, you'll just go back kind of to what you're doing. So if you're not keeping stuff fresh and oh hey look, there's a new Sinistro box, so now that new box is in front of the store at the counter, or it's part of the new arrivals station. So then they see it and they go, oh yeah, I remember Sinistro. And even if they don't pick that one up, they might go back and pick up one of the ones that they like from your brand. You know, it's like maybe they don't like a Maduro, but like, oh yeah, I remember Sinistro. Oh, this is a Maduro. Oh, I'm gonna go smoke the Connecticut that they have, or you know what I mean. So you have to keep yourself relevant. If you don't, you kind of disappear. So now when I'm blending, I'm usually blending with what's newer because it's more exciting for me. You know, like the Desperado, I had never tasted a Connecticut Desperado until like we were in the freezer and I saw a bale and it said Desperado on it, and I was like, oh, what is this? You know, and then you know once we smoked it, we smoked the pure grade, and then we were driving back to the factory after we smoked the pure grade. So I was already doing the math in my head. Like I already knew. So when I tasted the pure grade, it tasted a little sweet to me. So the first thing that came into mind was African Cameroon to intensify the sweetness. So that's why, you know, while we were driving back, I already was thinking African Cameroon on the binder. And then, you know, because of all the sweetness that it was going to get attached to the blend already just off the wrapper and the binder, I was like, oh, I'm gonna need Lajero. So I was already blending the cigar before we even hit the factory. And then when we got to the factory, I started putting everything together with what was going on in my head. But that's kind of how I started blending now. It's more of, you know, this is interesting because it's new. I haven't tried it. So that means if I haven't tried it and I've been in this industry 20 years, that means I'm sure 90% of the consumer base or 95% of the consumer base hasn't tried it. So A, it was good. B, it was marketable because it's something no one's tried. And then, you know, then we came up with a name, Mr. Desperado. It was just fitting. And then the design and everything else fell into place afterwards. So it all depends, you know. Now I like blending this way because I'm working with newer stuff. Like Paraguayan tobacco was very interesting to me again. And then now it's something we can market when we bring out the cigar and say, you know, we use Paraguayan tobacco. So it's another sales point. Oh, have you tried, you know, for our retailers, have you tried Paraguayan tobacco? No, you haven't. Oh, you should try this cigar. It has, oh, and you like Sinistro. So it falls into both things. And I feel like when you're using newer stuff and you're trying to be different, and it helps not only like obviously if I could blend a good cigar with it, then it's something we can help in the marketing aspect of it too by selling it.
That's a very interesting point, and you know what I always find fascinating is when you see the industry and the people therein, the brand owners, the manufacturers, the blenders, they all come from various different backgrounds. Some have tobacco in their DNA because their families have been it for generations. With others, you know, they've been musicians, artists, no matter which industry they originally came from, and then they take that deep dive into cigars. Um, with your experience on the retail side, what were some of the key principles or the key learnings that you took from your previous life and said to yourself, this is something that we have to apply to Sinistro because we know it's going to make our retail partners' lives so much easier and eventually the brand more successful on the mid to long term?
So, um, and I know this is going to sound a little weird, but I kind of so at the beginning, when I went to the factories, I realized there was a set of rules on the way you blend. You know, the fact that oh, you don't do this, you don't do that, you do this, you do this. You know, so after a few years, I started not following the rules, uh, and I think that's what helped me make more American friendly blends, like for the American market. Then, you know, like if you look at overall, you know, the last what 4 years, Nicaragua's outsold Dominican, you know, and the reason I think for that is because Nicaragua's blending for the American market, and as far as Dominican is when you talk to Dominican blenders, it's more based on what they like as opposed to what the market likes. So we started doing better once I threw all the rules from the factory out the window. And I started doing things differently. And some of the stuff was me in my shop being like, well, why hasn't this person done that? Like, well, they're the big guy. They should be doing this and they should be using this. They should do this and they should do that. And kind of that transferred over into, after a few years, because I'll be honest, the first 2-3 years when I was walking in the factory, I was very shy. I was kind of like, I don't know what's going on here. I have to listen to you because you're the expert. And once I broke those chains, I feel like I started making better blends and making stuff geared more towards the market that we were actually going after. We get it all the time. Like, you made this in the Dominican, you made that in the Dominican. How'd you get it so strong? How did you know what I mean? So it's possible to do, but the only difference is, the older blenders in the Dominican are not doing that. They're kind of still blending for what they like, as opposed to what the market is calling for.
Interesting. And I like the fact that you primarily come from the tobacco and the blending aspect, thinking about what truly matters, which is the humble cigar, right? Um, how does all of that translate into the packaging, the branding, the design? Because there are certain brands out there which from the very beginning had a very clear idea of how they wanted to present the product, pack it differently so it truly stands out. Because when you walk into the humidor and there's shelves over shelves of boxes and wonderful cigars, the question always becomes like, why do you pick this one over the other? And ever so often, that also comes down to visual clues or because something grabs your attention and it jumps off of the shelves and it speaks to you.
Um, One thing this is something I did notice is when I walked into the humidors, especially in the US, before our brand, everything looked the same. All the bands look the same. It's like the Latino feel, Latino names. So I felt like if we went with that same, we would just get lost in the sea, right? Because when you walk into a humidor, especially a big humidor, it's like it's a sea, you know what I mean? And especially if and 90% of smokers they don't know what they're smoking. Coming from the retail side, I was the guy when my customers wanted to smoke. I was the guy that came and asked questions to. Nobody else, because they knew I smoked everything. I tried everything. I've been to the Dominican. So I was the person they would always come and ask. So the way I was looking at it was, if and a lot of retailers don't go in the humidor with people and they don't give information. So how do you become the brand that's not lost at sea, with all the same, kind of marketing that we've had in our industry for so long, even the Nicaraguan brands, it's very, it's obviously they're not all the same, but when you break it down, it kind of when you put them all next to each other, it starts becoming a sea of the same, you know what I mean? So I wanted our brand to kind of pop a little bit more. So that's why I did it more, I marketed more towards, we do have some like Latin themed stuff, and don't get me, like me, I love going to the Dominican. I love the culture there. I got married to a Dominican, I love everything about going over to the Dominican. So it's not like, oh, I wanted to stay away from that. I just wanted to be different. So we're not getting lost in the retail stores. So, that's kind of where we are with our marketing. So, and coming up with the name sometimes, it might be something like Last Cowboy. It's something I had that I wanted to use, and we had a list of names, and I was like, okay, Last Cowboy's next, and then Mr. Desperado the name came up after I tried the wrapper. So it all depends on, how it fits in the year. The new one we're gonna drop at PCA, it's something like we have the blend done, but the name we had already, and we were working on the design pre-blend. And then we came up with the blend afterwards. So it all depends, you know. But I think if you have it's good to have a plan. It's great to have a plan, you know. And you could always go back to your plan, but it's always good to be able to change and switch from your plan. You know what I mean? And kind of do what is necessary or what you think would be better than what your plan might have been. So, you know, we do have a plan. We always have like, we're going to do this year. We're going to do that next year. We're going to do this year, you know, so that's, we have a plan, but sometimes you have to deviate from your plan. And that's kind of what we're kind of good at, is deviating from our plan when we need to do something special or get something going, or, you know, and we listen to our marketplace. You know, we have a Cowboy Barber Pole and Cowboy Caviar coming out. We wanted to do a little bit more of a push with Cowboy. It was one of our best-selling cigars. We hadn't done anything special with it, and we are like, okay, we're gonna this was, well, PCA wasn't in July, so we're like, we're still gonna release something in July. We're a little bit late, but it's okay because there was no PCA, so it doesn't matter. But it's coming in now. But we kind of we didn't want to, you know, being our bestseller on Cowboy, we wanted to, again, bring attention back to Cowboy after, you know, 4 or 5 years of Cowboy being released. So we're bringing the attention back to that brand. And that's something we hadn't planned on doing. That's something, you know, we did on the fly, to boost more sales back into Cowboy and to get that brand reignited and get, again, like if you're not one of the big guys, you can't have you can't have anything stagnant. You got to keep building your brand, keep building your brand. If you're not constantly building your brand, eventually you will fade away, you know, especially now with all, you know, every week there's like 10 new boutiques opening up, especially now. It's just a lot harder to compete, you know, and this business is a very social business. So, you know, a lot of the accounts, like if you're a new boutique brand, if you have a relationship with a set amount of retail stores, you'll get into those retail stores because of your relationship 9 out of 10 times.
And I think one thing that's important there, and Dave Garofalo, for example, from Two Guys Smoke Shop and the Cigar Authority, he's always adamant about that. It's not the first box that you sell which determines success or failure. It's the second, it's the third, right? And some retailers might be more open to giving a new boutique brand a shot and give it a try, open up a little space in the humidor for them. But the question then becomes, when's your follow-up order? Do you manage to get that second, third, and all the other boxes afterwards in?
Yeah, so that's that. I always say, you know, the first time someone picks up your cigar is usually, if it's one of those where the owner doesn't go in the humidor with you and doesn't get recommended, you're usually going off the band and the wrapper. That's what I would go off of, right? How does the wrapper look? Is it sheen? Is it not sheen? You know, if it's a broadleaf, is it toothy? Is it San Andres? If it's toothy, if it's a broadleaf, you know, is it thick? Is it oily? So obviously it's presentation right off the bat, you know. So first, so the first time it's an easy sale. If you have good band, good looking wrapper, it's not very hard to sell cigar, unless you're at a, you know, $100 price tag. Then you need to have somebody help push the brand. But if you're you know, the first sale is on looks, 100%. Then your second sale is on, you know, the flavor of the cigar. Are they going to come back and smoke it again? And luckily, you know, we have a pretty good retention rate, and we have a pretty good reorder rate. So I guess we must be doing a little bit right. So we have like probably we were at a 96 retention and reorder rate percent like a few years back, but we're still at 80% now. We keep 80% of our customers, and 80% of our customers reorder every 2 to 3 months.
Bravo, bravo. Would it be accurate to assume that, based on what you said earlier, usually you lead with the blend, you lead with the tobacco, you discover a new bale of something that piques your interest, you go all in with it, you start blending, and then once the cigar is there, you think about what could be a suitable name. How do we package this? How do we design it in a way that it's one cohesive experience? Or would you say it's also the other way around, where you have the concept, you have the name, you have the idea, and then you just need to find the cigar that goes with it?
It happened. It's happened for us. It's happened both ways. We've done it where, you know, like on the Desperado it was more. I saw the name. I tried the pure grades, and then I like the Desperado name. And we have a guy on our S. Hold on, let me see. So there's a guy inside our S, right? So
Nice.
the thought Desflorado is to deflower. Obviously, it's the process of the production, but I wanted to use also the other terminology for deflower or to de-virgin. So I kind of, without being very like perverted or disgusting, I just put a flower in the gent's mouth. You know what I mean? Something subtle, very easy, you know, nothing to be disgusting or perverted or, just kind of like, but still being classy, you know, upscale and kind of using, so it was just fitting to kind of put the rose in the guy's mouth, you know, and that was afterwards. The cowboy, I had the name, and then I started blending, and I knew I wanted a Connecticut broadleaf. I love broadleaf, and I hadn't used broadleaf, and I've been bothering the factory constantly about broadleaf, and I'm pretty sure it was kind of like, we wanted to make sure you were able to sell cigars before we gave you the good tobacco, or you know what I mean, not the good stuff, but like the stuff that's harder to come by, or and that's when we were working with La Aurora, but it all depends. Sometimes it's like with Last Cowboy, the name was so good, I knew I wanted to use that name. So, and then also I knew I wanted a broadleaf, and then also we hadn't had a Connecticut in the lineup, so it all just fell together. So we have a Connecticut cowboy and we have a broadleaf cowboy. So we have the same, but and when we do different wrappers, I do totally new blends, because I just feel like just changing the wrapper on the blend isn't very consistent way of, maybe the filler it just doesn't taste good with that wrapper. So when we do, if for some reason we bring an Honor Among Thieves Connecticut, it's going to be a whole new blend, as different from the Honor Among Thieves that we have now, because I want to blend the cigar, not just change the wrapper and be like, oh, now it's the Connecticut. You know what I mean?
Kind of like with the Last Cowboy, the Maduro, the Connecticut broadleaf Maduro, and Natural or Connecticut. They're two completely different blends. And then James, let them know the blend for the Mr. Desperado. Tell them what the binder is. The audience should,
I told him before we got it, but it's Marifel's African Cameroon. And dude, I was telling him before we got on the show, is I love working with their Cameroon. It's amazing tobacco to work with. And the more I learn about different things, the more like respect I have for you guys and your company at Marifel. You guys are doing very, very amazing stuff over there. It's and being able to look at guys like you haven't been in the industry, like obviously on the retail side, you guys didn't have a cigar, and then watching the cigar come out and having it, like it's back like when I started, like 17, 20 years ago, you couldn't bring a cigar to the market at $80 price point if you're new. You know what I mean? It just it wouldn't happen, And to see how much our industry has changed, that now that the understanding of, that why the consumer understands why that price tag is there for your stuff. Before, I don't think, 20 years ago, if you did this, I don't think it would have worked. Like there was a brand called Stradivarius. I don't know if you've heard of them or not. Great thick, came out. It was like a $50-$60 price tag, and the cigars were really good, but it didn't work. But the fact that you guys are able to do that now, and shows how much our industry has come so far. It's great for our industry.
James, how do you think about that, related to your own brand? Do you sometimes strategize about where do you want to position yourselves, also based on the price point, because particularly over the last, I would say, 2 years, so many brands just wanted to venture into that super exclusive 25 plus dollar range.
Oh yeah.
and and I think now everybody's realizing that the air gets really thin up there, and it's such a challenging market to compete in because of the expectations that come with such a price tag, and rightfully so, right? If you spend 60,
100%.
70, $80 on a cigar, then you're working off of a much higher level of anticipation and expectation, and as I said, yeah, rightfully so.
I mean, it's one thing when somebody like Marifel does it. It's that you have so much built behind Marifel that, like, when it came out, I jumped on going, and I showed you the band. You know what I mean? I went out, I found it, I bought it, I had to try it. You know what I mean? As opposed to, again, I'm not gonna throw out any names, but there's other brands that have come out, especially to the American market fairly recently, charging 80, 90, dollars. And being a blender, you question that because you're like, okay, I know the factory you're using. You know, anyone can go to that factory and make that cigar, as opposed to where Marifel, you guys have been growing tobacco for how long? You know what I mean? It's very different when somebody like Nestor Plasencia has that high price point, because he's grown. He's the king of tobacco in Nicaragua. He's grown so much tobacco. He has so much that he could save. So if he puts that price tag on there, it's fitting because who knows what he did, just like the Marifels. Maybe you guys have kept Cameroon, and then maybe that's why your price tag is at $80. Maybe, and that's why, and the stuff you've saved for all those years. And like you said, it took you, what did you say, 2 years to make this band? It's
Four in
not like,
total, I believe. Yeah.
yeah, four. Yeah, sorry. You know, it's not something where you just slap the band on there, put it in the cigar, and released it 30 days later, and we're like, hey, it's $80 because that's what we charge for it. And that's the thing, is like, when you guys have a cigar at that price tag, it's different than just another brand. Like, I would never be able to do that. I mean, maybe hopefully in the future one day, who knows, but we know where our brand falls. We know where what price point we need to be in. We know the market. We understand that we don't have that name. We don't have, me or Coleman's uncle wasn't a fourth generation master blender at this or that factory. So it's impossible for someone like us to do it. Now Davidoff, they have a cigar out there, and people are like, hey, did you try the new Davidoff? And I get 2 or 3 people that I respect their palate, and I'll be out there looking for that Davidoff. The Winston Churchill limited edition was a phenomenal cigar. I forgot what year they did it. They only had it in a Robusto. I went out looking for that cigar, but again, they have the name. You expect that cigar at that price point to be good. Just like when I picked up that Marifel cigar, I expected that cigar to have a, $80 profile. When you go pick up another brand and you expect that $80 cigar to have a profile, but it doesn't have that amazing, that leaves you wanting, if it doesn't have that, you're never going to go back and pick it up again. And I think the consumers see that. And, the few that have come out, are starting to realize that they're bringing out newer cigars at a normal price range, $12 to $20 now, not $80, because that our market is not gonna. You have to have something behind your brand to sell it for $80. If you don't have it, it's never gonna work. You know what I mean?
But James, I have to applaud you on and it goes back to what I said earlier about authenticity and the way you frame the conversation, the way you share it. I think that that's what you guys have done very successfully, and why Sinistro has resonated so positively with consumers all around is because you're very sincere and honest in your approach, and you're open about, hey, we don't come from like sixth generation, fourth generation, and somehow everybody seems to have Cuban blood in them anyways, because the moment you mentioned that magic C word, that there's fireworks
Yeah.
and it's legitimate all of a sudden. But you haven't done that, and I think with that you've been extremely successful because it resonates with people, and not everybody has to be multi-generational tobacco and cigar family, right? Because we need young blood, and we need different ideas, and we need a different approach also in order to keep the industry evolving and moving forward. So I wanted to applaud you on that as well, because the authenticity and the sincerity truly comes across with whatever you do.
I had very good teachers in the industry. I was lucky enough to be very close to two people, and I learned a lot from them. I asked a lot of questions, and I learned a lot from them. And I asked a lot of stuff about the last boom, and not this last one we had, but the one in the '90s. Right, I wasn't around in the industry at that time, but I asked a lot about what was going on, and I talked to a lot of consumers from from being a retailer, the older guys that did go through the boom and stuff, and I realized the reason why I think our boom died the first time around in the '90s, and it was short lived. And I think this last boom, if you look at our last boom, it didn't drop, right? It didn't just go away. It did drop. We had a little drop after the boom, but the guys that were smoking are still smoking. They're just not spending as much, whether
Yeah.
it's the economy or whatever it is. Back when it was COVID, they were getting all these checks. They were at home. They were shipping cigars to their house. They were smoking all the time. And but but I think our boom didn't lose traction like the last boom. And the reason I think the boom last time lost traction was because the consumer was being lied to. And there was like, oh, these are being rolled on the thighs of virgins in Nicaragua. And like all these stories started coming out just to compete with brands, compete with this guy and that guy. And the one thing I think that's what turned off the consumer was the constant lies. It's like one day, oh, dude, this came from a virgin thigh of some Nicaraguan woman. And the guy saying, no, of course it didn't, bro. What are you talking about? And then that turns you off right there. You look like an
Yeah.
idiot, in front of all your friends. And you're like, I'm never smoking that cigar again because I was lied to. So I think that was the problem in the boom in the '90s. I think the education, the shows, the podcasts like we're doing right now, and the honesty and all that is, I think, what kept this boom not going, but keeping those guys still smoking. I don't think we've ever in our industry had a time where there was so many 25 to 35-year-olds smoking. I've never seen it in our industry where you've had this much. When I first started, it was all older men that came, people that were at least twice my age, 40, 50. You would hardly ever, and again, I'm in California, so I can't preach for everybody, but you would hardly ever see a 20-year-old. It would be like, back then it was 18 and over to smoke. So you would see a dad come with his son. Oh, he just turned 18, and then you would never see the son again. It was done. He would never come with his friends. You know what I mean? So I think this boom has helped our industry a lot, and it's educated so many people in the right way, and it's helped continue those guys to stay interested as opposed to get turned off and walk away from the whole idea.
Piggybacking on what you just said, James, Coleman, I'm curious as to your feeling for where the market is at right now, and where do you think the industry is going over the next couple of months? What's some of the feedback that you're gathering from your partners, be it in the US but also internationally?
Um, uh, or the next 10 years or so. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
No, you're
you were
breaking in
just
and
cutting
out.
off a little bit.
Yeah.
You were breaking up. Now it's fine.
Hold on. Hold on one moment, guys. Sorry.
Technical difficulties. We'll be right back after these commercial breaks.
Yeah, we don't do all these cuttings and lightings and everything brought to you by a gazillion of different companies. We're fully unsponsored.
Oh yeah.
But I think Coleman is trying to log back on.
Yeah.
In the meantime,
Don't worry.
James, let me ask you a question from one of our viewers, and I'm very happy that that Stein is watching over on the YouTube live stream, and Arn seems to be there as well. So he
My boy
asked
on.
about the Stein asked about the last Bavarian, which he said is his favorite cigar. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Again, Barbarian is kind of all thanks to the connections I have. 60% of um, the so I always wanted to use Medio Tempo or Super Ligero, but I the pretty much the what I got from it is it's so rare and uh, it's such a rare tobacco that you can only use a certain percentage of the tobacco if you want it to stay consistent. So um, I kind of I when I was blending, I for so talking with the factory, I had them save up a certain kind of medio tempo or super ligero. Piloto Cubano ligero is one of my favorite ligeros to work with. I love that. It's got such a creamy taste to it. I love strength, but I feel like you always have to have flavor with strength. You know, strength is amazing, but if it's just something that's going to kick your ass and say have a nice day, and there's no flavor behind it, and there's nothing enjoyable behind it, I don't see.
What's the point? Huh?
Yeah, you know, so um, uh, I was able to get the factory to save up a good amount of Pilato Cubano, Medio Tempo, or Super Ligero. I know in Nicaragua it's Medio Tempo, and Dominican it's Super Ligero. So um, we were able to save up enough of it where I was able to put about uh, a big percentage, without giving out the number, a big percentage of the profile is Super Ligero. So meaning you're still going to get the creaminess of the Pilato Cubano, but you're going to get a nice little pick me up on the with the medio tempo. So a big percentage of that, and then the reason why I wanted that is because one of my I love Maduros, but when you're traveling, like I'm not going to smoke a Maduro in the morning because that's not going to be my only cigar. So I'll try to work my way up. You know what I mean? So um, I love it. And there's sometimes I just love when the Maduro hits the back of your throat right here, where you can feel it and get the flavor off of. So that's kind of what I was going with the Barbarian on that guy. And I love the Barbarian. It's one of our stronger smokes. And that's kind of the idea behind the Barbarian was, you know, the design is loud and strong, so I wanted the blend to be nice and strong too, you know. So that was kind of the work behind the Barbarian.
Beautiful. I'm not sure. I know that Coleman had to leave at some point because
Yeah, I don't know
he
what
has to
time.
take care of his dog. I'm not sure if
Oh yeah,
he'll manage to
I
come back.
I don't think he's gonna come back. I'm pretty sure he had to go to the vet. I just looked at the time. It's about 3:11 there, so that's about the time he said he had to get off.
Well,
Maybe he tried to
in any
relog on,
case,
it didn't work.
I just wanted to say thank you to Coleman as well for joining us, and we wish him all the very best for the stuff he needs to take care of. Um, James, when now after 10 years, um, Sinistro has firmly established itself as a much applauded and much appreciated boutique brand. You mentioned that there's a lot of new brands entering the market right now, and it's clearly a very competitive landscape at the moment, and nobody really knows as to where the market is headed next. the import numbers into the US still seemed very strong in the first half of the year. At the same time, it seems like a lot of humidors are fully stocked. We see some discounting online, which always hurts and is sort of a sign of the market cooling off ever so slightly. But if you were to launch Sinistro all over and you had to give it a fresh start, what would you think are the necessary ingredients for a successful dish being cooked up right now if you wanted to launch again?
Make sure you have a lot of money. You need a lot of money, especially now. Not for the cigars, not for your travel, because
Hmm.
that's the only way. You know, me now. If you're asking me now, right now, if I would start Sinistro fresh again, I wouldn't, because of all the new boutiques out there. It's such an uphill climb. But if I didn't have Sinistro and it was my dream to start a brand, I would still start it now. But looking at it from an owner of a brand at this time, I think it would be a very, very uphill climb. Especially with all these new boutiques coming out, the shelf space is very limited, and depending on where you're going to, Texas, you don't have to pay as much rent, so you have bigger humidors. California, rent's expensive, so you have smaller humidors, depending on what city you're in, obviously. But so it's uphill climb right now, and the biggest thing you would need, I think, obviously, you need a great blend. You need amazing artwork, because you got to compete with guys like the Merifels coming up with these bands that are so beautiful. Uh, but you need a lot of money for the road, for hotels, gas, depreciation on your car. It would be a very, very uphill climb, because even the guys that took me in right from the beginning, I was just visiting one of the stores. Like the guy who took me in at first, right? He wouldn't take me now because of he's experienced so many boutiques that didn't work, and he's just at a point where he just turned off on boutiques, so he's not opening any new boutiques. You know what I mean? He's growing my brand and other boutiques that he's established, that he's established already. But it's such an uphill climb now. But again, like, I wouldn't know that unless I was visiting these stores constantly and talking
Yeah.
to these guys. And most of these guys, um one on one, they'll, like, especially when you become friends with them, you start getting the truth out of them. But at the beginning, it's always like, oh, not right now, and this and that. So like 4 visits later, you're like, well, what about now? So
Mm.
you got to get really close with these retailers to really get the answer, because no one wants to tell you, hey, dude, I'm not gonna bring you in, or everyone wants to be nice. No one's gonna tell you like, oh, I'm not gonna bring you in. It's always gonna be answers like, oh, maybe next time. Right now, it's not the time for me. I just spent so much money. You're never gonna get. I'm never gonna bring you in. It's very rare. You'll get that answer from somebody. I don't think I've ever gotten that answer from anybody. So again, like, when people are telling you not now, you better have the money for gas and hotels to keep going back and checking in and making sure. So I think that's your biggest uphill climb, is the amount of money you're going to spend traveling, and you better have the wherewithal to travel. That's another fuckery.
Yeah.
Better than I do. At
It's
first
not for
traveling,
everybody, that's for sure.
yeah, at first it's amazing. You're having so much fun, and then after your like 20th delay, you're like, dude, fuck this. I don't ever want to do this shit again. Like, uh, I've been stuck in airports for 9-hour delays. You don't. That's you have to be pretty unlucky if you're traveling to hit one of those. But if you're constantly on the road, you'll get that at least once a year. uh,
Very
and,
true.
and and at the beginning, it's fun, it's exciting, and then after a while, it's dragging. And so you better have the wherewithal to be able to constantly be on the road. And I had a son. He's 3 years old, and now having a son, it's even harder to be on the road, because like, one of the last trips I came home, you know, my son came running up to me, gave me a big hug, obviously to my knee. And, you know, it was the most amazing feeling in the world. And then followed by the worst feeling in the world when he looked at me and he's like, Daddy, you came back. And it crushed me to think, like, you thought I wasn't going to come back, you know, like,
Mm.
so, you know, that, these are all things I never even thought of when I was working on the brand, you know. And if you're not traveling and you're not visiting the consumers, you're not talking to them, you're non-existent, you know.
I think that's a very important point because there's different variables to that whole equation, and you can have a very strong social media presence, but unless you truly forge those personal one-on-one relationships with the store owners first and foremost, and then the end consumers visiting those stores, you'll always lack a fundamental element of those relationships that ultimately result in brand loyalty. Um, so speaking of that, and let's throw in another one, which is reps, independent brokers, and
Mhm.
which school of thought do you follow when it comes to people representing the brand? Because at the beginning, it might be, the easy route to say we're going to work with independent brokers, guys who are on the road all by themselves, and then they represent different brands, and they bring on Sinistro as well. At some point, companies make that shift where they're like, let's rather bring those guys in-house because it's a more efficient way and it'll create loyalty in the long term. Which school of thought do you fall under?
If you have the money, go in house and go in house from outside of the industry. Uh, that's what I
That's
would
interesting.
outside the industry, yes. Because all the, I mean, not all, okay. I only have my demographics of my area, you know, to work off of. But, you know, brokers are gonna sell what's hot. At the end of the day, that's it. You know, if you have 8 brands, how can you have brand loyalty? You get what I'm
True.
saying? You will have brand loyalty, but to a degree. You get what I'm saying? You probably love all 8 brands the same. But if you walk in to some place, you're gonna sell what's hot. You're gonna
Mhm.
sell what's new. That it just that's sales 101. You know what I mean? You're gonna pitch the hot stuff. You're gonna work on the hot stuff. So if you're dealing with somebody who has 4 brands, um, and I have brokers. I don't have anybody in house, but when they have 4 brands, um, I've noticed sometimes they'll walk into a store and they won't even have your brand to pitch because everybody has quotas, right? So today he has to open 2 new accounts for X company, but for Sinistro he only has to open up 1 account a week because we're boutique, right? So I don't expect new accounts every day. So he might not even pitch your brand to that store because he needs to fill his quota for the other brands. You get what I'm saying? And
Very true.
especially if it's a newer territory, like let's say I don't have anybody in Wisconsin, right? And I pick up somebody in Wisconsin, I can't expect huge growth right off the bat. You know what I mean? You have to start growing. You have to start growing. You have to do events. You have to stuff going. And again, you don't want to open everybody in the same territory because then you're taking away sales from one shop and another shop and another shop. So you want to open in one shop, get your sales established there. I always say this to everybody when they call me and I have somebody very close to them. I go, listen, I am not Arturo Fuente. Everyone's not going to go looking for my cigars. I'm going to do you a disservice and the guy next to you a disservice by doing this. I know. So you're going to buy a box of 20 cigars, let's say, and he's going to sell 5 and you're going to sell 5. That doesn't help anybody. And eventually both of you guys are going to get rid of my brand. So, again, you want growth, but you want growth the right way. You don't want to obviously overstimulate one territory too much. Hopefully the guys that I talk to, and eventually I do open the other shops, but when I feel that territory can support me in 2 shops, instead of both of you guys hating me, I'll start a relationship with one of you, and then eventually I'll come and I'll start a relationship with the other guy. Not that we can't have a relationship if I'm not selling to you, but that relationship of being partners. And, that's the only way you're really gonna grow the brand. So you in-house, if you have the money, get outside the industry because you want consistency. You know what I mean? And some of the brokers, like especially, and I love these guys. Like there's some of my friends, even guys that broker for other companies that they don't broker for me. They get stuck in their ways. You know what I mean? I know brokers that they'll wake up at like 1 in the afternoon because everything's set for them. They don't have to
Mm.
hustle. If you're working as a broker for like a brand like that people are calling and constantly sending you orders. You don't need to wake up early. You don't need to constantly be visiting shops. You're gonna get your orders. You know what I mean? And then the guys that don't order from you are gonna go buy it from a distributor. So you're still gonna be making those sales anyways. You know what I mean? So there's a bunch of distributors in every state. So the smaller guys are gonna go to the distributor anyway. So you don't have to constantly be hustling and moving and up. And I feel like once you get into once you're a broker and you get it, or you're working with those big brands, it's hard to break those bad habits and go back.
You mentioned something super interesting just a moment ago, and I would like you to elaborate a little more on that when you said ideally find somebody from outside of the industry who you're gonna who you're gonna want to bring on. What are some of those characteristics and personal qualities you're looking for when you bring somebody on? And why do you think that it's refreshing or beneficial to bring somebody who hasn't been in the industry for a while?
Because I like so my the our office manager, he was never in the industry. He his mom works for my dad, and he was looking for a job. Younger guy, he's like I think 23, 24 now, and he started working for us. I didn't have to break his bad habits. I just had to teach him all new habits. It's a lot easier to teach new habits as opposed to go breaking bad habits. Yeah, of course, everyone has some bad habits you're gonna have to break, but like if it's industry habits, it's a lot harder to break. You know what I mean? And like I've worked with some brokers. There's some broker. Well, one time a broker responded to me one time. He's like, "Don't worry, I got this. I've been doing this for 3 years already." And I was like, "Oh, that's great. I've been doing it for 12." Like I did exactly what you're doing. And I was able to grow the hardest territory in our industry in America. The hardest territory is California. And I was able to grow the hardest territory. So, you know, that's the breaking bad habits. Is like when you get that answer, like I've been doing this for 3 years. I know what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm sure you do know what you're doing. And I tell everybody it's your territory. You know your people better than I do. But at the end of the day, if that's your answer, well, I've been doing it for 12 years, and you kind of want to, that's a bad habit. You want to break those bad habits. It's much easier to build new habits than it is to break old habits. And that's kind of my
Very true.
philosophy on it.
On the positive side, are there certain qualities or characteristics that you're looking for in particular? Or would you say that there are certain industries that you had particularly positive experiences with? Let's say somebody coming from the hospitality industry, so they know how to treat people well, how to serve, how to deal with the challenging customers. Are those ever thoughts that cross your mind as to where you're recruiting from?
Well, I haven't gone in-house yet, so I haven't done any recruiting other than the guy who's my office manager. So there's no sales guy I have in-house right now.
Mm.
So, but the one thing I've realized from my manager, in-house manager, we take him to PCA. We're probably going to take him to Dortmund next year. And the one thing I told him, and he's younger, right? So as soon as he sees all these older guys walking up to him, he's very not scared, but like
Shy, at least.
shy and kind of like, oh, dude, these guys are all established. They all have money. I just got out of school. Like and how am I supposed to relate with these guys? So, um, so my look on it is, what I decided that we should do is, constantly talk to people. That's what at PCA, at TPE, or when I take them, like if I do a multi-vendor event, I would take them sometimes to, if it's a casino or something, or Vegas or somewhere he would want to go, and I would take him with me, and I would just be telling him, talk to people, talk to people, talk to people. And when we were at the booth, not at PCA, obviously at PCA, we're there for 3 days. We need to make money. But like when I'm at the booth at an event, I make him talk to the customers. I'm always behind him, you know what I mean? And I pick up, oh, this is one fact that's not right, or this is one thing that he said that's, or whatever the thing is, but I'm there to back him up and then slowly teach him how to, but talking, that's the best way, is constantly talk to people, keep talking. And you got to be friendly. Obviously, if you're an asshole, you shouldn't be in sales. Uh, but that's what I've learned. It helped him get more confident, and just constantly talking to people, and realizing that, look, they're just normal human beings. They're not like guys that are going to eat you because they have more money than you, or you know what I mean? Like, so that was the teaching point with him. Specifically, like what other places I would pull from, I have no idea, to be totally honest. I don't even know where I would start if I went in house with guys. Well, we're still not there yet. I think from what I've heard from the bigger brands, they said you want to be doing 1.1 or 1.2 million in a territory before you even think about bringing anybody in house. So I think we still got a little ways to go before a certain state hits that dollar mark for us. So I still got time to figure it out.
That's an interesting stat, though. Very cool. James, I want to throw one of our treasured guests here a little bit on the spot, a fellow Californian of yours, and one of our most loyal fellows and regulars, and he's back on the show, and it's his birthday today. So I want to give a big shout out to Brian, and we all wish you a very, very happy birthday, Brian. Good to see you again, my man. It's been a while.
Cheers.
Happy birthday, Brian.
Thanks. I got my cognac and my cigar shirt, and just enjoying the weather.
Beautiful.
We've been
What part of Cali
celebrating.
are you from?
I'm in well, it's a Burbank address, but I tell people Toluca Lake. It's like
okay. The warehouse is in Glendale, bro.
Oh, really? Oh,
Glendale
man.
right now. Yeah.
That's right down the street.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, we're gonna swing by.
Definitely. Let me know. Reach out to me on Instagram. Let me know when you want to come by. The doors are open, brother.
Cool. That's great. There used to be a really nice little restaurant called Chess Park over there, that because I'm a chess player, and I don't know if they closed. They named it Chess Park because there used to be an actual chess park there, and they tore it down to put up a restaurant. And I think they didn't want to piss off the community that loved the chess park, so they just named the restaurant Chess Park and made it chess themed.
And shout out, since you're talking about chess, shout out to my Armenian people. We got chess team of the decade, the Armenian team. So I just saw that today too. So that's a big win for us Armenians. That was awesome.
No
I was amazing seeing that.
For sure. Yeah, chess is huge there. Because I teach and I have students, and I love nations that value it in terms of education. You learn it in school, and not every country's like that, and it's like really, really nice to see. I wish the states honestly could support it, at that level.
Yeah, when in Armenia, you go to I think first grade or kindergarten, you start playing chess. You learn how to play chess like when it's part of your school curriculum.
Right. Yeah, that's so cool. I'm jealous, but yeah. For now, chess in the States is relegated to like an after-school enrichment program, basically. But yeah, we've been celebrating all week. Bethany's been making plans and surprises, and it's going for days and days. And so we were out having fun last night at trivia night. So I'm a little hungover, just kind of the mega relaxed mode right now.
As you should be. It's your birthday, brother. Many hangovers to come.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks.
Brian, I know you always make it a point to sort of hunt down some of the cigars from the people that we have on the show, and I'm sure you're going to try a whole bunch of Sinistros very, very soon. Just out of curiosity, what's your birthday cigar, or what's the lineup for
You
today?
know,
I should rather
oh,
say.
just one. I think that's about all my stomach can handle today. Honestly, I know I just grabbed this. It came in the mail. I don't even know. It was from Nomad because I have their cigar of the month club. Uh, and I there's no barcode or anything, so I honestly don't know. Vogue Tiger. I'm gonna have to do some research. But I'm pretty sure I've had. I know that logo. I'm sure I've had some of your
I'm
smokes.
pretty sure. Living in California, and you're a cigar smoker, if you
Yeah.
frequent stores, you've probably seen it at one of the stores, I'm
It
sure.
probably, yeah, it's got to be. I mean, the ones close to me, I've been to Harry's and I've been to Cigar Sanctuary. Those are the ones that are like right close to me. So, yeah. And then I don't know. I get a lot of the Cigar of the Month clubs stuff too.
Awesome.
So I don't know if
We
if you
do,
end up.
we do a few of them. We did My Cigar Pack, Privada Cigar Club, Luxury Cigar Club, King of the Leaf. We're going to be doing cigarclub.com next year in January and February. So we do quite a few of them.
Okay, a luxury then. I'm sure that's where it is. I have had it. Yeah, I'm with
You
them.
just got one, I think, last month,
Right.
Mr. Black.
Yeah.
And there's a couple more coming in the luxury club for possibly October and November.
Cool. Oh, that's interesting. Since I probably should ask a question to the guest. How do brands feel about that? Because you hear, like, I have the Smoke In one. I love it because I feel like it's a bit of a discount, and I'm getting to try all different kinds of new, interesting stuff. And I trust the ones I have. I trust the recommendations of like Abe, and I know that they're all going to send me good things. How do brands feel about these clubs?
I know it's for me, it's amazing. I think it's beautiful that you have something like this for guys to try different cigars. And you got to remember, not everybody's near a cigar lounge. There's a lot of guys that need to travel like 2 hours to get to a cigar lounge sometimes. So, brand recognition, helping consumers smoke the cigars, and actually, getting it out there without having to put so much work into it. I think it's a beautiful thing. I know some cigar, like some of the bigger guys don't want to be in it, but I get it because they've already made the name for themselves, and they're not trying to put they don't need to go out and establish themselves. So it depends on the brand. I love it as a brand. I think it's awesome. I think it's getting a lot of younger guys into smoking. I think that's what's helping the younger guys get into smoking, because all the younger guys are more into like tech, and they're into social media and learning about stuff and getting on social media. And like, if you have something you're interested in, you'll go and Google it, and you'll look into it, and you'll check it out. And I could tell, and that's the same way I am. If I see something, I like it, I want to know more about it. And that's the newer consumer. And I feel like the cigar clubs are helping do that. You know what I mean? So as I would go into as many cigar clubs, good cigar clubs, as I possibly can. And I feel like the ones I work with are good cigar clubs.
Yeah, for sure, no doubt. Yeah, I've never gotten a Davidoff in my pack in the mail.
Yeah, but
Cool.
those guys are established. They don't need to. If they make something, they sell it. It's going to sell out. You know what I mean? They don't need to give a discount for a huge amount sold, or it doesn't follow their brand. Like what they're trying to use their brand for, and they're already famous enough. People are gonna go spend the money on Davidoff. They don't care if they get it in a box or not.
Yeah. Is there a lounge in Glendale that I should check out? I honestly, I have not been like amazingly impressed at the lounges that are like close to where I can get to easily in LA.
Have you been to Cigar Warehouse in the Valley?
No,
They got
where's that?
it's on Ventura. It's right by the mall. It's on the same side as the mall, but it's like one block before the mall. There's also Puro Humo in Glendale. It's right in front of the Glendale Galleria. He has a very good lounge and a nice selection. And then there's also Five Star, closer to Eagle Rock area.
Okay.
Another great establishment. The owner is amazing guy. You know, all these guys that I'm telling you about, I'm very good friends with the owners. Like, they're really cool guys. They'll sit down and talk for hours. You know, very, 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 very cool people. Great humidors. I'm a cigar geek, so like that's kind of something I like. Places I'll go frequent, they better have a good selection and you know, stuff that I'm gonna geek out over. So those guys are very good. Cigar Warehouse, Puro Humo, and Five Star, and then not in any particular order. I just went kind of closest to you to furthest away.
Cool. That's great. Yeah, yeah. That's not too far. I used to love Joey's cigars in Encino, and it's just a little too far for me. But
Okay, yeah, yeah, Joey's is further down. I think Cigar Warehouse
yeah.
is a lot closer.
Right. Cool.
But,
Yeah. And Reinhardt said they stock Mirafell.
oh, they okay.
That's
That
great.
could have been where I bought it from, honestly.
Cool. Well, thanks for the answers and the birthday wishes. Cheers. Thank you, Reinhardt.
Always, brother.
Happy birthday, Brian. Good to have you with us. Um, Over to Dejan, probably freezing just as much as I do in Vienna. But hey, man,
It's
you got a
not as
fancy new name. What's happening?
I'm just, so that people would pronounce it, because everybody's always asking me how to pronounce it, if it's with the J, because it's really pronounced Dejan. Yeah. So this is how you should pronounce it. That's how I write it, so that people would pronounce it, and just
Well,
not to, yeah.
they for us Viennese people, and with the types of names that we have, you know you're always in trouble. No,
Yeah,
nobody's gonna
exactly.
get it right. That's okay. It's part of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. So, James, really nice, listening to you. I was checking your website and the cigars, and I do appreciate really that you disclose so much information about the cigars themselves, so that there are, 10 years aged, the wrappers, and which binders and so on. They sound amazing. So my question is, when can we expect them to be available in Austria, and what price range do you imagine they're gonna have here? Do you know? Like, do you have any idea, or you don't have this concept?
I have no idea what the tax rate is in Austria, so I would never. I wouldn't even know. Do you know? Like, is it going to be similar to Swiss? I would assume, or
Reinhardt would maybe know. I don't know.
Well, in general, if you look at the German market, for example, Austria is always going to be like a 10% markup from what you see in Germany. So on average, it's definitely more expensive than in some other European countries here.
so what I try to do for all my distributors is I'll work with them as best I can, to make sure we get the prices dialed in right, and whatever things we can do legally without crossing any lines, to make sure the prices are as fitting as possible, even if it's me losing some margin on it, just to get it out there. I've done that before, Um, so I have no idea what the tax rate is and stuff like that. So I'll give you kind of those. One thing I do know is that my cigar that sells for $7 here sells for 25 or $30 in Canada. So if it's
No.
anything like Canada, it won't be a pretty number. But I'm assuming Europe is not as bad in Austria. And if it's 10% over Germany, it shouldn't be too bad. Again, I don't have any numbers solid in my mind right now, but I was talking to my somebody in Germany to distribute Sinistro, and the price points seemed very decent. It didn't seem like they were insane or out. So if it's only 10% over what we were talking, and this was it was a year ago that I was talking to him, so I don't remember the exact numbers, but if it's anything similar to that, it should be pretty decent on the prices.
Okay, because the cigars themselves, when I read about them, they sound like something that I want to try, and I would really love to see them either in Germany or in Austria. But are they already available anywhere there in Germany, maybe?
No, not in Germany yet. We're hoping to get Germany started. The only places we have right now is Swiss, um, um, Swiss, um, Norway, and Germany. If you reach out to the Instagram, there's a website in Swiss that does sell it. I could link you up with the website.
I cannot order from Swiss to
Oh,
Austria.
okay.
It's not allowed to order cigars to Austria.
Okay.
You cannot do this. It's forbidden.
You
I
can
have to
only get
go
it
to
from
Germany
Germany.
and buy them there.
Oh, okay. So, well, I'll work on it, brother. Trust me, I'm trying to get as many countries as possible. As soon as anybody from Austria comes and approaches me, I will not be shy about saying yes. The good thing about our brand is, again, we don't have our own factory. We work with a factory that could scale up very easily. So um, opening more accounts is not a problem for us. So if we get a distributor and he wants to go right away, scaling up is very, very easy. We keep a lot of inventory in Dominican too. So when we do get a request for international shipment, we could usually get it out in a month or two. Worst case. So we just have to get it, just leaves the aging room, gets to the packaging, we package it, probably takes about a week or two, and then it'll get out. But it all depends on how much how far behind packaging is. And so it's always a month or two to get some stuff out to our international guys. So as soon as we get somebody, I'll be all over it, bro. I promise.
Okay, great. I hope it's soon, because I would love to try them.
I'm with you, bro. I hope it's soon too. I would love for you to try them too.
Great. Thanks.
Dayan, many thanks for chiming in. James, brief question on the age of the tobacco, because more often now you see people making a statement about the age of the tobacco that they use, and simultaneously, you will probably see some critical remarks or some question marks when it comes to the accuracy of that kind of information. Just from your experience in the blending, um, how does the age of the tobacco factor in, and how do you feel about certain leaves once they reach that 8, 9, 10 year age mark, as to how they work differently and how you can incorporate that into a blend?
So, I mean, yeah, if you're gonna smoke, let's say a Corojo that just, came out of fermentation, and you smoke a Corojo that been aging for 10 years, is gonna have a big difference in the flavor profile, always. Yeah. What I say, so when you're blending, it's totally fine. And I know I'm gonna get, some people might not agree with what I'm about to say, and some people might agree with what I'm about to say. But when the blend is completed, anything after 10 years of age, like when the cigar has aged 10 years, the blend starts to fade. The flavor profile starts to fade. It depends on the blend. Some could be sooner, some can be a little bit later, but the general knowledge that I've gotten is like 10-year mark, the blend starts to fade. And
However,
not,
sorry if I interrupt you there, but you're talking about aging post rolling, so the actual
yeah.
cigar that's aging for that amount of time. But what about the raw material? Like, because
So
you have to look at two different parts of the equation, right? The raw material, how that ages before it's actually rolled into a cigar, and then the aging of the cigar itself once all the tobaccos have been married.
So the raw material, when it's raw material, you're blending with that flavor profile in mind. So it's not hard to blend because you have that flavor profile, and then you're gonna see what you want to achieve with that pure grade that you've smoked, right? So you smoked a 10-year-old Corolla, it has a flavor profile. Um, Whether it's like if it's 10 years old, it has a different kind of flavor profile. When it's 8 years old, it has a different kind of flavor. But when it's 4 years old, it has a different kind of flavor profile. So it all is all up to the blender when they're blending that cigar, what profile they've tried and what they want to do with that, right? So there is no going back on the flavor because that's what the blender decided that he wanted the flavor to be at. And that's what he continued to use, or that's what he built off of, right? Now, if I
Absolutely.
make a cigar and then 10 years later you smoke it, that's different because what I intended to make wasn't it wasn't technically meant to be have aged 10 years or smoked 10 years
Yeah.
because I didn't make it, age it for 10 years, then try it and be like, this is what it's supposed to taste like, right?
Mhm.
And again, it's all a personal preference. It's not a like I had this one guy, one of my stores that he would come in and he was the Prince of Nigeria. It wasn't like crazy rich, but he had good money. And he would come in and he would buy the biggest cigar in the shop, the darkest cigar in the shop, cut it into three and smoke it, right? Which, if you ask anybody, that's like blasphemy to do to a cigar, right? You're not supposed to. When a blender makes a cigar, he's usually blending it as a story. It has a first third, a second third, a third third. There's the build up. There's the resin build up as it goes back. That's the flavor profile. That's what. But at the end of the day, when that person buys it, he could do whatever he wants with that cigar.
Yeah.
It's all personal preference, right? So whatever I'm saying is stuff that I've learned, I've thought about, and stuff that I've put into practice myself. But again, if someone gets a cigar, ages it for 10 years, smokes it and says this is the best cigar in the world, that's his opinion. You know what I mean? I can't say no because that's what he enjoyed. That's what he liked. You know what I mean? My opinion would be 10 years later, it's not going to be what I was trying to go for that profile. You know what I mean? So, um,
Absolutely.
so when the guys would talk to him like, oh, you're not supposed to cut the cigar 3 times, like he would cut it into 3 pieces and smoke 3 pieces, right? So the guys in the shop would be like, oh, you're not supposed to do that. And they would always give him shit about it. But I would always tell him like, hey, dude, that's what he likes. How can you tell
It's
him?
your experience. Exactly.
Yeah, they're like, who are you to say that to him? Like that's what he enjoys doing. It's not like he's doing it to save money. Because remember, he had money. It's not like he was broke. He wasn't doing it just to get a third and buy a big cigar and break it up into 3 pieces and have 3 small cigars. So again, that was all personal preference. Yes, it's wrong in my eyes, but again, he enjoys it. How can I tell him that's wrong if it's something that he enjoys doing? At the end of the day, that's what cigars are made for your enjoyment, not for me to tell you how you're supposed to enjoy that cigar.
Just on the raw material side, when you work with particularly old tobaccos, it's difficult to come up with sort of a general rule of thumb, and every tobacco will react differently. But grosso modo, when you think about working with aged tobaccos rather than something that's only had 1 or 2 years after the fermentation, what are some of the attributes that you find in those older tobaccos? Is it mostly that the tobacco becomes a little more elegant, it becomes less pronounced, has a little more finesse to it?
I mean, it depends on what you would use as finesse as a definition for, right? So, um, like if you feel like so some guys would feel like finesse is more power, right? So if the older your tobacco gets, it's not going to be because it's going to be in a freezer, right? The best tobacco, if you're going to age stuff, it's the wrappers and stuff. They're going to be in freezers, right? And at the end of the day, okay, so oil, right? That's what where flavor is coming from, right? When you freeze something, you're killing some of the oils, no matter what. So for me, finesse would be something a little bit younger, as opposed to somebody else's finesse would be something a little bit older, right? So for me, my belief is the longer it sits in a freezer, the longer you're taking away from the flavor profile because you're killing some of the oils. Anything that has oil, you put in a freezer, it's going to kill some of the oils. It's not going to be exactly what it's supposed to be, as opposed to like if you had that out of the freezer. And any tobacco that you're going to age for that long of time has to go in a freezer, especially the wrapper. You know what I mean? It has to, or you're just going to have too much loss, and it's not going to. It's not going to makes sense profit wise for the grower or the factory that's holding that tobacco. So again, it all depends on what you like. For me, finesse is more oil, more flavor, more. But for somebody else, finesse is more smooth, more streamlined, more not as heavy on flavor. So it all depends, right? What you're going for. So the one tobacco we use that's 10 years old, I made it into a Maduro. And the reason I did that was for two different, and the factory's like, don't do it. You're not supposed to do that. You know, you're going to lose more because we use the Revuelto method. So anything 10 years old and friction is going to cause more holes. So you're going to lose more tobacco. But I felt making it a Maduro would be more consistent on the flavor, because if we're using 10-year-old crop, remember, that crop could be totally different. The 9-year-old crop could be totally different from the 10-year-old crop, depending on how much sunlight the 9-year-old crop saw. It was there overcast that whole, let's say January was all overcast, right? And the year before, there was no overcast, So to keep that blend more consistent, I decided to make it in a Maduro, and I think it's the NV line. It's just NNV, and I think that line is phenomenal. Like it's very, very smooth. It's got a very good profile. It has a good amount of strength in it. So I was able to do something that I thought that my personal preference was to make it a Maduro to keep the blend more consistent, because we don't have a ton of that tobacco. So if the 9-year crop doesn't taste right, you're screwed that year. Or you're going to put out something bad, or you're going to put out something that's a lie, meaning you'd have to go back to the 8th-year crop. So now it's not a 10-year crop anymore. So, that's kind of where that's why I made it to Maduro. It's more consistent to flavor. It's going to have that same rich, full bodied, like chocolate notes, no matter what happened to that crop that year.
Very interesting. Thanks for sharing. James, you've been incredibly generous with your time and with all your experience and stuff that you shared with us. I'm very, very grateful for you. Before we wrap things up, take a little peek into the crystal ball together with me, and what's some of the things that you're working on that you would like to see for Sinistro to grow into and evolve over the next couple of years?
I mean, I want to grow internationally more, obviously nationally more. I want to have more. It's a lot easier to do stuff when you have insane amount of funding. So, not to like. I mean, again, I have so many ideas that I can never put into fruition, because of like lack of finances or whatnot. So when I was talking to Matt Booth when he sold, and again, it's not like something I'm dying to sell tomorrow, right? But I feel like I could do so much if I find the right company to sell to. I probably would not. I mean, I would like to have more freedom if I do sell, meaning to do whatever I want, whether it is to get less money or to get paid less on the back end, whatever it is I have to do to have more control over it. But to be able to do more for the consumer, to be able to do more and have more of a reach, that's kind of what I really want for Sinistro. Again, I'm not in a dire need to sell, and if I am going to sell, I want to sell to somebody where I have more. But again, like it's not something that I'm dire in need of. For me, it's more of doing this for the consumer base and growing for the consumer base. And there's just some things like you can't do as a small brand, and there's some things that you can do amazingly as a bigger brand. And again, it's not like to sell, but to be able to do more. That's kind of what I want to. That's kind of what I want for Sinistro. Growth, obviously. Being able to go in and do more. Like obviously, like this year I've been in Dominican twice. Whether it's because I've had to be on the road here, whether it's for whatever reason, I shouldn't be going to the Dominican 2 times a year. I usually go 5 to 6 times a year, and that's kind of where I want to be more consistent of I trust my factory 1,000,000%. You know, that has nothing to do with it, but I want to be more hands-on in the factory. Like I want to go more. When I go 5 or 6 times a year, production's going smoother. You know, box factory production is going smoother. You know, and it's the same in any business you're in. The more people see your face, the more relevant you are. At the end of the day, your numbers might be great to the box factory and to the factory that's producing the cigars, but you know, if they're not seeing your face and seeing and if I'm not going, I can't play with the new tobaccos. I can't do, you know, those things that I really want to do. So, you know, and obviously the only way to get to that level is finances. So, you know, obviously I want to get off the road as a rep so I can concentrate more in the office. I do take care of California and Nevada myself. Like I still hit the road constantly and take care of California and Nevada myself, but I want to work more out of the office and be more, you know, sometimes I'll be on the road and I won't leave my hotel till 2 p.m. because I'm on the phone with the factory and with the box factory and Dominican and this and that. And then I've wasted my day, my money at the hotel, and you know, I could go now see maybe 2 or 3 shops, you know, and depending on how frustrated I am too after that conversation, maybe I'm so frustrated, I'm like, fuck it, I'm not going out today. You know what I mean? So that whole day is gone. So, you know, those are the things I'm focused on more now, growing, being able to do more for the consumer, educating as much as I can. I love doing these podcasts, but when I'm on the road, I can't do it, you know? So literally I just got back from Vegas last night. Tomorrow I'm going to San Diego, and then next week I'm going to be in Arizona. So, which I feel like I'm doing a great service to Sinistro, but I'm not doing a great service to the consumer because I'm not building when I'm on the road, you know? So that's kind of where I want to be. And I like doing things for Sinistro. I love the fact that I'm able to get our sales and stuff, but I want to do more for the consumer.
Great point. Well, James, we wish you nothing but the very best for that, and continued success, continued growth, and keep doing what you're doing. I think Sinistro has really earned its accolades, and it's resonating very well with the consumer base out there. So keep doing it, keep growing, and whatever we can do to help and support. You know, it's one big family, and I'm very glad that with our Light 'em Up family and community, we could share a little bit about your story with the world. And thank you very much for taking the time and being here with us today.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you having us on. And look, another thing I want to say is I was very humbled when you did reach out to us. I didn't expect that. I didn't even know you even knew about the brand, if we were even anywhere near the radar. And you know, you're saying all these things, and you know, it's stuff that like it's amazing hearing, but it's not stuff that I see. I still feel like I have so much to grow. I still feel like I have so much to do. I feel like I have so much to prove still. That it's flattering as hell for coming from somebody like you. You know, it's amazing
No,
to hear stuff like that.
James, you know, we're just humble facilitators here as well, and it's a privilege to share your story with the world. So thank you very, very much. I really greatly appreciate it, and it's been a tremendous pleasure having you on and sharing a lot more insights about Sinistro Cigars and your journey. Thank you wholeheartedly.
Thank you very much too. I appreciate everything, and I love the fact that you gave me the audience to be able to say what I was able to say. I very much appreciate it, and it's amazing that there's a brand that's as big as yours that is actually still looking out, like looking at the smaller guys and looking into the, you know, the view of somebody as, you know, I still consider myself very, very small, and I feel like I have so much to go, but it's amazing, and thank you so much for everything that you are doing or gave me the opportunity to do on your show.
Thank you, and many, many thanks to Coleman as well. We wish him nothing but the very best. So you guys keep cracking, and I hope to sit down and share a cigar with you in person very, very soon.
That would be my pleasure. I would love nothing but to do that. Thank you.
James from Sinistro Cigar, many, many thanks for being at the Light 'em Up Lounge together with us. To all of you guys, thanks for chiming in. Thanks for hanging with us, and all the best to you. We'll see you here next week. Until then, be safe, be well, and light 'em up. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.